What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Boy podcast. My name is Stephen Wright. I am joined by Mr. William Monroe. How you doing, Will? How was your week 2?
Pretty good. Mixed bag. I've got a couple that may be coming down here to tonight, but overall, I think I'm going to be about 5-2 here this week. So another pretty good week in the fantasy realm here. Not so much in the real football world, though. I don't know if you watched that game yesterday as well, our Niners and Eagles.
I did not. I was out pretty much the entire day, so I did not. It was pretty low scoring.
Yeah, it was definitely an old school kind of knock them down.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, there are questions out of week 1 of whether the Philly defense was actually good in stopping Atlanta or if it was an Atlanta problem. And, they stopped the 49ers. I mean, not enough to win, but, 17 points isn't a big number. So it does seem like the Philly defense is pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the Niners had their 2 touchdown drives. Both came very long. They were both 90-yard touchdown drives, but they didn't do anything other than that. So definitely is reassuring, as you said, to see see that defense playing well against a good team. But I think it's probably a combination because we also saw the Atlanta team not look very good again against another good team in Tampa. So could be a combination. But 2 weeks in, you're starting to see some trends. You're starting to be able to shape some opinions about how these units, offense and defense on each team, actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. And next week, once you get 3 weeks, you really start, the trend starts solidifying. So this next week is going to be a big one. But for that week, we got some waivers to go through. You ready to start busting through them?
Yeah, we can run through some waivers here. Go through kind of some guys that are owned below 60% or right around there, and kind of what their matchups look like here, and if it's someone that we think should be picked up.
Yeah, so first on our list, we're going through some running backs. James White had a big game. He's about 42% owned. He's got New Orleans this week. Are you interested in James White at all?
I am. He was one of the guys I drafted in a lot of leagues as like my 5th or 6th running back, and kind of always see him as that good PPR option. So if you're in any type of PPR, he's got some floor, but he always just seems like a fairly safe option to have in case you have injuries ahead. You can kind of plug him in. In our scoring, half PPR, he had, looks like, 10 touches for 9.1 fantasy points in week 1. And then here this week, he had another 11 touches for 15.5 fantasy points. So got in the end zone. That's really what it's going to be. But I think you're going to be hoping for that, 7 to 12 range when it comes to scoring if you don't get a touchdown out of him.
Yeah, and he's someone you probably don't have to pay a whole lot for. If he's out there in your league, he's just always that kind of undervalued guy. People are going to be focusing on, the Pattersons, Sony, Michael Carter, that kind of group. And he'll go under the radar and maybe go for, 5% of your budget. Maybe it doesn't cost a lot. So he's a pretty good buy this week.
Yeah. Speaking of Sony, you mentioned there, I think he'll probably be one of the hotter buys. Saw his carry count go up from 1 attempt in week 1 to 10 in week 2. Does have a tough matchup against Tampa, but 10 for 46 was an encouraging showing. 60% owned, so may not be out there everywhere. What do you think about Sony?
So he is a tough one. I mean, it's going to depend on the Henderson injury because I don't think they've given a time frame on that yet. Unless I've missed something. Have you seen a time frame?
I think so. No, I know he left. I think it was the 4th quarter, didn't come back. So obviously, if that's going to be an extended injury, if we know he's out this week or beyond, probably shoots up what you had bid for him. So there's a chance he could be the top claim, I think, of the week, should we get more clarification on Henderson's injury. But even so, I think he's still someone that, I wouldn't mind adding even if Henderson doesn't look he's going to go, because he's got that chance to step in and at the very least get a timeshare, if not potentially take over a backfield at some point.
Yeah, and Henderson gets hurt a lot. So, it's going to get used eventually. Now, this week, if Henderson's out, that is worse. And we got Tampa Bay. That's not the easiest of matchups. Arizona after that, Not the best, not the worst. Seattle, Giants, Detroit, Houston. He has a pretty good stretch eventually. Whether Henderson will be back by then or not, who knows? Or back again and then back out. You never know. So yeah, he's an interesting player. I don't know what I would bid for him, to be honest with you. He's probably going to command what? Somewhere 13, 15, 16, 17%, something like that. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably looking at around there. If you really need a running back and we find out that Henderson's out for a while, you're probably going to be increasing that. But I think that's a safe bet to have now, and then just make sure you monitor that Henderson news, as that could definitely change the bid for him.
Okay, cool. Next up, Michael Carter. Finally had a pretty good week. Finally, it's only been 2 weeks, but
yeah,
had a good week. Rostered about 50% of leagues. He's got Denver this week. What do you think about Carter there?
Yeah, another guy who saw his carry and touches increase. He only had, I believe, 4 carries and 1 catch on 2 targets in week 1. That bumped up to 11 carries, 2 catches on 3 targets in week 2. So we saw his usage go up. Even in, pretty negative game script, they lost 25-6. But he had over 5 yards a carry on 11 carries and, almost 15 yards a catch. So he's seeing pretty good numbers when it comes to what you're looking for average there. And his touches now up to 13 is decent. I mean, if it came away with, I think, 9.8 in our league, half point PPR scoring. So if he somehow got in the end zone, you would have been thrilled with the week, but 10 isn't bad. So he's definitely someone I think you could add to the back of your roster. Maybe you don't want to play him right away, but he's someone that if the usage continues, I think you can play a guy that's going to see 10 to 15 touches. So maybe a risk to see, to guarantee if they play him this week, because we're not sure. But if you want to go with the trends, he's not a bad play.
Yeah, I agree. Tied to the Jets offense, ideally it improves. I mean, it's hard to go south from where they're at. So, ideally
against New England, that's probably going to be one of the worst games that you'll see for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, so hopefully it gets better here on out for him. I'm going to lump these two together, Will, because technically they're both the second string. I think that's probably debatable for Patterson, but we got Tony Pollard and Patterson both had a really good weeks. Patterson, depending on your format, could be a wide receiver. He could be both a wide receiver and a running back. So it's going to depend there. So he's got that interesting, an extra level to the strategy involved around him. But what do you think of these two guys?
Yeah, both guys I think that at this point should be rostered. I mean, a lot of people probably had Pollard rostered as a handcuff if you have Zeke, or even just a guy to throw on your bench and see what happens. Should Zeke get hurt, you've already got him. You don't have to spend a bunch of your fab or your top waiver claim. But Pollard's an example kind of, if you with the workload that Carter got, it's pretty similar to what Pollard got, but he was able to turn it into a lot more. 13 carries for 109 yards, gets in the end zone, 3 catches for 30 yards. He looks like a beast, had a great game. Home game against the Eagles this week on a Monday Night Football could be a little more difficult, but maybe that's the game where they have to throw the ball. Tough, you kind of throw the matchups out, the records out when you're playing a division game. So it's a pretty interesting matchup with Eagles offense, has been mediocre, had a couple big plays, but has stalled. The Cowboys defense has been pretty bad, and then a great Cowboys offense, which versus what we imagine is a great, we're seeing as a very good to great Eagles defense this year. It's going to be interesting to see. I think he's a guy that I don't know that I'm thrilled to play just because you don't know what you're going to get, but I think he's absolutely got to be rostered.
Yeah, I think you could definitely say that about Pollard. He's going to have these games where he just has standalone crazy value in games like last week where he just looked fine. He's going to bounce around. Patterson, last week I said I wasn't super interested. I'm definitely more interested now. 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
That's a pretty big deal. So I think I'd be willing to pay quite a bit for him. 20+%, I think. Pollard probably Pollard's tough. You'd probably have to go probably same range for top Pollard, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably higher ceiling for Pollard, so you may have someone bidding on the ceiling and saying, all right, I'm going to go get him, and, I'm keeping him the whole year in hopes that there's an injury ahead of him. I could see someone spending up more for Pollard maybe, but I don't know, it's interesting. we'll see.
Any other running backs you're looking at here, Will, want to discuss?
I think McKissick is an interesting one. He may be forgotten because he was Thursday. It seems so long ago, but came down with 5 catches for 83 yards, another 4 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown. I can see him just with the points being a hot waiver ad. Buffalo's a tough matchup this week. Can you imagine Gibson's going to get back into the swing of things? So I don't know. I mean, I think McKissick has to be added in most leagues, but with Gibson there, it's going to have pretty limited upside. Now, I didn't see anything about a Gibson injury. Did you? I know he was off the field at the end of the game, but I didn't hear anything officially with the injury.
I haven't heard anything. I think he's okay.
Yeah. Kenny Gainwell, decent. He seems to be getting the carries. I don't think you're going to play him, but someone that I think needs to be rostered. And Zach Moss comes back, actually active this week. Gets in the end zone, has some carries. So I think a couple of guys that can be added. You're not going to play, but not bad stashes. Any thoughts on the San Francisco backfield with a couple of guys coming in to visit there? I believe Lamar Miller and Duke Johnson. Steve, any insights? Any insider for us?
No, I think I think Mitchell's still the one you want. I mean, obviously you got to watch the injury, but I think he's still the guy that you'd want to start. Again, a tough matchup against Philly, apparently. But, as long as he's okay, I think he's fine. After that, I don't know who you would gamble with. Hasty also got hurt. So, I mean, if he's fine, he's the guy. But if not, then, it's not going to be Trey Sermon. He got the concussion. And then Lamar Miller. I mean, Kerryon Johnson. Who? I don't know. I guess I take my shot on Kerryon because he's younger. Or maybe it's Duke because he gets the pass catching role. Who knows? If it's not Elijah Mitchell and Hasty, then I'm not rolling the dice on any of them.
Well, that wraps up running backs. And I think you probably wait on those San Fran guys and see what happens. I mean, if you're end of the roster spot and you want to throw someone on there, but I wouldn't have super high anticipations until we know what's going on. Let's flip over to receivers here. A hot one that I think probably not rostered in most and slightly above our usual stipulations here, but Michael Pittman, 61% owned. I've got him, in our work league here. I've had him on the bench, but he came up with a huge game: 12 targets, 8 catches, 123 yards. Didn't get in the end zone, but that and then in a half or a full PPR will definitely get it done and showed out. Now, some questions maybe with Carson Wentz apparently having 2 sprained ankles. Did you hear that?
I did, yeah. And
that's ridiculous.
We got 2 Colts on here because we got Pascal. That's much less owned at 16%. So we got 2 Colts there, and I can easily say I'm not interested in either of them, given the Wentz injury. I mean, if you got a spot and you want to take and you can afford to wait long term on somebody, I would grab Pittman because depending on the Wentz injury, if he's out for a few weeks and he's back, then Pittman's a good play. But I'm not playing either of them if Wentz isn't playing.
Yeah, I mean Pittman's someone that I wouldn't want to play, but I think he is getting to the point where he's just a talented player. So as long as he can get a few targets, he's going to put something together. But, yeah, I mean, without the offense humming and Wentz, I don't think you can play Pascal. Any other players here? We got showing Sheppard. I wasn't a huge fan of him, but he's got a good matchup against Atlanta, and he seems to just consistently be one of the more one of the more consistent targets here on the team. What do you think about Joan Sheppard?
Yeah, I mean, you're not excited about him. I think you have to roster him at this point. 2 good weeks in a row. He seems like, the number one guy for Daniel Jones, and, an offense is probably going to be playing from behind. So, I think
getting targets.
Yeah, he's worth owning. We got a lot of kind of the normal guys. Ronald Moore has piqued my interest. That's 2 good weeks in a row for him. I got a bad feeling the Arizona situation. I mean, the offense is definitely leveled up, but it's going to eventually morph into this Tampa Bay, Carolina thing where it's going to be Hopkins and Kirk or Hopkins and Rondell. Like, you can't rely on Kirk and Rondell and Moore hitting big plays every single week. There's going to be some downers in there. But I think he should be owned. He's probably No, Henry Ruggs is probably more interesting to me, I think. But Moore's probably a close second, just because Ruggs has the opportunity to be the number one wide receiver of his team. That's not going to happen for Moore.
Number 2, probably. Right. We all know Waller's really the number one there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I get what you mean. I just don't trust Ruggs because I just don't think he's going to get the volume. He had 7 targets, 115, and one of them was a deep ball. So without that, and that's really what you're banking on at Ruggs. But without that, you're hoping for big plays because I don't think you're going to see a ton of volume there. So I think Hardman's probably another guy here that it's interesting to me. You imagine his yards per catch is going to be super high, but he came down with just 5 catches for 55 yards, so a little on the lower side, but it's almost reassuring to see that he can have a stat line that's not 2 for 80.
Yeah,
so
true.
I think Tyreek Hill definitely got bottled up, and you saw them have to go to other players outside of Kelsey. And I think Hardman's someone that I wouldn't mind rostering throwing on the bench, and then if you need just an upside shot at one of your flex, you put him in and hopefully he scores, but he seems like he's at least being worked in a little more consistently with target count.
Yeah, he's interesting. And like you said, Tyreek got bottled up. I mean, that's kind of your counterpoint is Tyreek's not going to get bottled up too often, and that's going to hurt him. But yeah, he's not a bad shot. I mean, he's always been a guy we could take a shot on if need be, and he'll catch a bomb. Like you said, he's showing a little bit more now, so maybe he's leveling up. Maybe it was a 1 week thing. So you have to take your shot and just decide what you believe, I guess.
Yeah. With that said, we'll move on here to tight ends. Got a couple of options that could be interesting here. Max Williams, 0% owned, but he came up with some big targets. As you mentioned, that Tampa potential with the offense there in Arizona. But he's someone that, I think if you're playing the waiver tight end, hoping for upside, hoping for a touchdown, you could do worse than Max Williams. 7 targets, 7 catches, 94 yards. Now, he had 1 target for nothing the first week, so you do have dud option there as well. With an offense like Arizona, he's not a bad, kind of gamble if you are just trying to gamble on the tight end position.
Yeah, he's not a bad streaming option. Of the options here, he's probably 3rd on my list.
Yeah.
That we have. We got Jack Doyle here. He's going to fall in the same category for me as I put the other Colts earlier. It's just going to depend on Wentz. Are you thinking the same or?
Yeah, I probably go Williams over Doyle, but yeah, the other 2 that we'll touch base on here, I think, are a little bit more attractive when it comes to guys you are interested in playing.
Yeah, so we have Jared Cook. Another good week, looking good. Offense is looking good. Only 43% owned. He's got Kansas City, so that's got some shootout potential to it. I'd be very interested in adding Jared Cook at this point, especially, if you've been streaming, he looks like a guy that can end your streaming and you could just plug him in every week. Yeah.
This could be a week you actually get him too, because, it was okay. He had 5 targets, 3 catches, 28 yards. So only came out at 4.3.5 points. So maybe someone is thinking, 8 first week, 4.5 this week. I don't want to risk it with him. I'm going to go take a shot on Hooper or somebody else. He might be someone that gets dropped, and if you're streaming, got a pretty good matchup here against Kansas City from, just what the game script's going to look like. So Cook is someone that I'd be interested if I'm streaming.
And then we got Austin Hooper. Someone's got to catch the ball in Cleveland. And if all these guys keep getting hurt, he seems like a prime candidate. Only 40% owned.
Landry out.
Yeah, Landry. Who knows what's going on with OBJ? I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones or Swartz did anything this week. Yeah, I could be mistaken there.
I don't think anything spectacular.
Yeah, so
something that stands out.
Hooper's like the veteran of the team somehow. Only been there 2 years.
Yeah.
He is a reliable guy. We've seen some good stuff from him before. Not so much in Cleveland, but someone's got to catch the ball. So he is if you're streaming, I think he's a pretty good shot. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, he's another guy that, it's interesting because they're probably going to be using multiple tight ends. They still have Harrison Bryant there as well. So you could be frustrated that you get the guy who duds, but they both had solid matchups. Hooper had 5 for 40. Harrison Bryant had 4 for 49. So both are not bad options. You're going to be banking that you get the one that gets in the end zone. This week you end up being, a running back receiver and Demetric Felton gets in the end zone on the screen. But yeah, Njoku's still there. So there's a lot of mouths to feed. but he's someone that I feel like has probably the most veteran presence of all of them there.
Okay, and finally, to round out the episode, we'll turn to our streaming options here. We got Daniel Jones versus Atlanta, Teddy Bridgewater against the Jets, Darnold at Houston, Roethlisberger at Cincy, Jimmy G against Green Bay, and Eric Carr at Miami. Who are you interested in the stream this week?
Yeah, two that stand out to me, Daniel Jones against Atlanta. Atlanta's defense has been really bad, and this will probably be a pretty good test because we had the Eagles' offense look really good. We still don't really know where they're at. We had Tampa's offense look very good, and we know what they are. In New York's offense, I think this will, maybe prove that Atlanta's defense is just really bad, or give us, some clarification on New York's offense as well. But Daniel Jones, as much as you don't, really think about it, he is a rushing threat. So you're going to get those, bonus fantasy points on the ground. And this could be a shootout. I do like the Giants defense as well as a streaming option. We'll talk about them in a minute. So maybe their defense shuts down Atlanta and it's not as much of a shootout, but I like the shootout option there. And then Darnold, that's Thursday game. Darnold at Houston, though, I think could be interesting, especially with Houston's offense potentially really slowing down because Tyrod Taylor's now, word is going to be out about 4 weeks. So you're going to have a rookie making his first start on a short week here, Davis Mills. So that could be interesting as well. Sam Darnold against Houston. Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of good matchups. Derek Carr at Miami is interesting. I think I'd probably put my bet on.
Carr is questionable too, though. He got hurt, and Miami's defense is pretty good.
Yeah, I think I'd put my bet on Bridgewater personally against the Jets. I don't know. I trust him more than Daniel Jones. I mean, that shootout potential is there, but I'm more confident in Bridgewater. And Darnold's good, but that could just be some CMC monster game or something. I could see the games could be weird because of everything you said. So just Bridgewater a little more. Bridgewater's my guy, but I mean, plenty of good options this week, I think. Yeah,
well, we'll flip over to streaming defenses as well. A couple of options here that stick out under 60% owned. The aforementioned Panthers at Houston on Thursday. Once again, going up against a rookie quarterback could be interesting. Cardinals at Jacksonville, 51% owned. Then we have a couple of very low owned Titans at home for the Colts, possibly without Wentz. Giants at home for Atlanta. As we mentioned, that could be a shootout, but if the Giants defense is better like we've seen, that could be an interesting one as well. And the Raiders at home for Miami. Raiders defense looks better than I think we expected, and Miami could be without Tua. So potential injured QBs there. It's kind of the theme of this streaming defense. What are your thoughts on any of these defenses, Steve?
Yeah, again, pretty good options. The Raiders interest me, but I don't think I could actually pick them just because there's just trust issues with the Raiders and me. I mean, every year it seems like they're good for half a year, and then they suck. So I don't want to roll the dice with them. I don't think I could pass up the Panthers defense. Against Houston, you got the rookie quarterback. You also have it on Thursday. So not only is he rookie, he's got no time to prepare. So, that is a good recipe for me. So I think I'd pretty easily go with the Panthers.
Yeah, and I think I started them last week in our league, and with the matchup with New Orleans, I went elsewhere and played somebody else, but they had back-to-back good weeks here, so we could actually just be lining up for this Carolina defense. Just might be good. It might not be that they've had just easy matchups with the New York, New Orleans, and now Houston. Maybe we'll find out the week after against Dallas, but I think this Panthers defense could be better than people think, so I like that matchup. I do. Like I said, if you really need a stream, I think the Giants are interesting as well. But I'd probably go with that or the Panthers. It's kind of the main option. Carolina, Arizona against Jacksonville isn't bad either.
That is fair, and that's going to take care of our waiver episode for the week. Tune in on Thursday for our start sits. Until then, folks, trust your board.